Hello and welcome to the first episode of Everything Not Saved, in which I'll be taking an in-depth look at some of the more obscure video games from the last 20 or 30 years. Today we'll be looking at Kula World, released as Kula Quest in Japan and Roll Away in North America. The game was the only release for the independent Swedish studio Game Design Sweden AB. The game was supposed to be titled Kula Quest Worldwide, however there were some trademark issues revolving around the rock band Kula Shaker. The term Kula comes from the Swedish word Kula, meaning ball or marble. The game was released for the PlayStation 1 on the 10th of July 1998 in Europe, and on the 30th of November 1998 in North America. Kula World is a puzzle game in which the player takes control of a beach ball, and must navigate through a series of 150 maze-like levels. There are also 30 possible bonus levels to access, as well as 10 hidden levels. It's worth noting that only in the Japanese version of the game can all 10 of these hidden levels be accessed, due to the fact that the European and North American releases place some hidden exits for these levels in locations that are impossible to reach. While we're on the topic of regional differences, it's also worth noting that the Japanese release also features a tutorial level which contains all of the traps and enemies featured throughout the game. The level was removed from the menu in non-Japanese releases, however it was left on the game disc, and is still accessible via a cheating device. The Japanese version of the game, interestingly, also gives the player a percentage score after completing every level, based on how many coins, gems and keys were picked up, as well as other aspects such as how many crumbling blocks were broken. One final feature unique to the Japanese release are the unique ending and credits videos which were produced by Sony themselves. The gameplay at its core is very simple. You control the beach ball with the D-pad or analog sticks, press X to jump, and move the camera with R1 and R2. The physics of the game are unique in that the ball actually sticks to the map regardless of what direction you move in, as if the map is so dense that it has its own gravitational pull. This mechanic is even reflected in the manual, where the pages are printed in different directions as if to mimic the shifting angles that the player would experience throughout the game. Coins and gems are collected for points, while keys are collected to unlock the exits that serve as the goal on every stage. You can also collect pills which may slow you down or increase your bounciness, and hourglasses which flip the amount of time remaining to complete the stage. 5 different fruits can also be collected throughout the stages, and collecting one of each will unlock a bonus level. In terms of obstacles, the player will face spikes, lasers and other enemies which will cause the level to restart if touched. The game was developed by Game Design Sweden, a company that was started by 3 friends in Stockholm, the 2 brothers Jesper and Jens Rudberg and Stefan Persson, who were involved in the Atari ST demo scene as a group called Elektra. A demo scene is a computer art subculture dedicated to the process of designing demos, which are small computer programs that use the existing technical capabilities of a given computing system most effectively, usually in the form of audiovisual presentations. Another member of the team was Johannes Söderqvist, who was also part of the same scene, but at the time was a member of another group from Gothenburg called Omega. The 4 would all meet at a demo party in Norway, a demo party being a facet of the demo scene in which creators would get together to show off their creations. In Johannes' own words, "We were all very competitive and focused on bringing out the best from the 16-bit hardware. We made some amazing stuff, and I think the next logical step was to make games. I was working on a game for the Atari ST together with a coder, and we had a publisher. Unfortunately, they went under and we never finished that game." A couple of years later, Johannes Söderqvist would find himself working in a record store, and one day Jesper Rudberg came by, saying that they had started a new company, the aforementioned Game Design Sweden. He told him that he was interested, and he quit his job to join them, working from Gothenburg and sometimes taking the train to Stockholm to meet them. Game Design Sweden originally started making a tunnel racing game, somewhat similar to the extremely popular PS1 racing game Wipeout. A couple of months into pre-production, Söderqvist had a dream where he came up with the very basic idea of a ball navigating a 3D labyrinth made of square beams. When he woke up, he immediately sketched out a rough drawing of the maze he'd envisioned in his dream. He created an animated render in the graphics program 3D Studio DOS and showed it to the other members of his team. Realising the potential of this simple yet intriguing idea, the team immediately decided to put the racing game aside and develop a prototype for the puzzle game instead. In the initial design phase of the game, one idea the team worked with was to try to replace the Kula beach ball with a more relatable, likeable character. Initial sketches and tests showed this character as a rabbit-type creature, somewhat resembling the eponymous Totoro character from Studio Ghibli's film My Neighbor Totoro. Johannes Söderqvist stated that, in hindsight, he was glad that the team kept the ball, because it kept the game's feel more in the puzzle genre, and gives less of an impression of a classic action platformer. Talking about the artwork style, Johannes states, "I think most of it just developed by itself in a way. The skybox and block graphics came from testing lots of ideas and then focusing on what worked. I knew that I wanted the game to have a dreamlike, abstract feel, whilst at the same time to feel intuitive and logical. The traps and enemies were very simple, and the most important aspect was to make them feel intuitive." As the sole artist, Johannes found it easy to just run with his ideas that felt right, with no need to explain or translate his ideas to any other artists. Stefan Persson and Jens Rudberg worked on the other aspects of the game, with the three running back and forth with renders and real-time tests. Jesper Rudberg developed the map editing tools for the game, which consisted of a vector-based MS-DOS graphics editor. Additional level design was carried out by Matthias Karlgren, Martin Stiegels and Richard Stiegels. The game's soundtrack and its sound effects were made by Johannes' father Dan Söderqvist, with his electronic music group Twice a Man. Although the group had produced music for theatre, television, film and radio, as well as working with visual artists, this would be their only video game soundtrack. The team went to the European Computer Trade Show in London, a now defunct annual trade show for the European computer and video game industry, with a VHS cassette containing footage of the prototype. They talked to several publishers, with the reception varying between them. At the time, in order to develop a game for the Sony PlayStation, developers were required to show their project to an account manager. After the trade show, Game Design Sweden went to the Sony offices and showed them the same video. Sony were impressed, seeing the exact same potential as the team did, and agreed to publish the game. Kula World was released to positive reviews and sold fairly well, with around 150,000 copies being sold worldwide, more or less making back the money lent by investors to Game Design Sweden. The game itself remains something of a rarity today, with copies generally selling for around £40 to £50 on eBay. I got my copy for around £40 from my local independent second-hand game store, Ninja Game Den in Brighton, East Sussex. The game was also featured on official PlayStation Magazine's demo disc number 16 in the UK, and I think that's where most people remember playing it from. The version of the game featured on the official PlayStation Magazine demo disc was in fact an early beta, and the gameplay was somewhat different, with alternative win conditions for the featured levels, such as collecting all fruits or colouring in all of the blocks on the map. Game Design Sweden continued making games and grew slightly, starting work on an adventure game and a standard platform game, although Kula World would remain the only game to see an official release. The team started looking around for a company that would be interested in buying them. One of these companies was DICE, the studio behind titles such as Battlefield, Mirror's Edge and the Star Wars Battlefront series, but they ended up buying the Refraction Games studio instead. A few years later in 2001, Johannes Söderqvist would find himself working at DICE, serving as art director for many of the titles in the aforementioned series. Game Design Sweden would eventually be bought by a company called NetBaby World, initially creating 3D web-based games for the netbabyworld.com website using Macromedia Shockwave, then later switching to their own proprietary 3D engine called Playcom. The website, which is still live as of the date of this video's creation, proved greatly popular and even won 2002's Webby Award for Best Game Site. However, the site struggled to make money, and the Playcom website now states that in April 2003, Playcom was acquired through a management buyout by the management team, as well as key employees from former NetBaby World. Following this update, the community features were removed from the platform and updates to the website began to cease. As previously mentioned, Game Design Sweden's Johannes Söderqvist started working at DICE in Sweden in 2001. He then became an art director around 2005 and has worked on several games in the Battlefield series, created the art style for the first Mirror's Edge. He was also the art director on the first Star Wars Battlefront game. Jesper Rudberg would go on to form the independent game studio Doctor Entertainment in 2009, and their first game was released on Steam in 2010. The game, Puzzle Dimension, bears more than a passing resemblance to Kula World, and you could even argue that it serves as something of a spiritual sequel to the original. If you're a fan of Kula World, and let's face it, if you're watching this video you probably are, then I recommend you pick it up on Steam or on the PlayStation Network. It's a lot of fun. Jens Rudberg took a slightly different direction, and in 2005 co-founded the consumer electronics company Teenage Engineering, where he currently serves as technical director. The company produces synthesizers and audio electronics, used by popular artists such as Beck, Depeche Mode, OK Go and Churches, and has won a number of design awards for their products. Kula World has left its mark on the puzzle game genre, with the team behind Sega's Super Monkey Ball citing it as an inspiration. If you'd like to play the game today, it was released for download to PlayStation 3 via the PlayStation Store on the 29th of November 2007, and an Android port was released by Sony in 2011, although this appears to be no longer available on the Google Play Store. So that's how 4 friends from Sweden with a passion for technology came up with the unique puzzler that is Kula World. Thanks for watching guys, I'll see you next time.